There's something about the hours after midnight. When the streets go silent, the world slows down, and the shadows start to move on their own. It's the time when you feel most alone, yet somehow not completely alone. Every sound seems louder, every creak in the floor, every flicker of light. Your brain tells you it's nothing, but deep down you know something's watching. These are two real stories sent in by people who learned the hard way, that nothing good ever happens after midnight. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and don't look behind you until the video's over. I used to laugh at those creepy stories online about people finding strangers living in their homes without knowing, until it happened to me. This is my story, and to this day I still don't stay in a house alone, ever again. It started small. I moved into a quiet duplex about 6 months ago after my breakup. I wanted peace, space to reset and think. The rent was cheap, maybe too cheap, but it felt like the perfect place to start over. The first few weeks were fine. I worked from home, spent evenings gaming, cooked simple dinners. But then little things started going missing. Nothing major at first. My keys, a can of soup, my phone charger. I figured I was just distracted, still adjusting to living alone. But when I started hearing noises inside the walls, that's when I knew something was off. At night, right before I'd fall asleep, I'd hear soft scratching sounds, like nails dragging lightly along the drywall. Sometimes a faint thud, like something shifting. I thought maybe it was mice, so I bought traps. Nothing ever got caught. A week later, I was working late one night around 1 a.m. I went to the kitchen to grab water, and I noticed my fridge door was slightly open. I never leave it open. And sitting on the counter was an empty yogurt container I'd thrown out earlier that day. I just froze. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. I lived alone. The front and back doors were locked, every window closed. I checked every room with a knife in my hand, but found nothing. That night, I slept with the lights on. A few days later, I told my friend Chris about it. He laughed, said I was probably sleepwalking or something. I wanted to believe him. But then, one morning, I woke up and saw something on my bedroom floor. It was a half-eaten sandwich, the same kind I'd packed for lunch the day before. I was shaking when I checked my kitchen again. A few cabinet doors were open, and there were crumbs on the counter. I called my landlord immediately. He came by the next day, looked around, and said he'd check the attic and crawlspace. That's when things got worse. That night, I was watching TV around midnight when I heard it again. Thud, thud, thud. Right behind the living room wall. I muted the TV. It stopped. Then a whisper. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. He's awake. I jumped up, ran to the door, and got out of the house. I didn't even grab my keys. Chris came over 15 minutes later, flashlight in hand. We searched the whole place again. Under the bed, behind the furniture, everywhere. Nothing. But when we opened the attic hatch, something fell down. A dirty blanket, a half-empty water bottle, and a notebook. Inside the notebook were small, messy notes. He eats at 1 o'clock. Goes to bed around 3. Don't make noise when the TV's on. That's when it hit me. Someone had been living inside the walls, watching me, learning my schedule, waiting until I slept to come out. The police came the next morning and searched the entire attic. They found a small crawl space that led behind the drywall into the wall cavity above the living room. There were food wrappers, a flashlight, a blanket, and a small knife. The man who'd been hiding there, he was a former tenant. He'd been evicted a year earlier and had never really left. He crawled through the walls every night, sneaking down when I was asleep. The fridge, the missing food, the noises. All of it was him. When they arrested him, he told officers he just liked living close to people. I moved out 2 days later. Now, even when I stay at hotels, I still check behind the walls and under the bed before I sleep. Because once you've lived with someone inside your walls, you never really feel alone again. If you ever hear noises in your house that you can't explain, don't assume it's the pipes or the wind. Because sometimes, someone might be living closer than you think. I used to work as a night security guard at a corporate building in my city. It was an easy job, decent pay, quiet environment, barely any people after 10 p.m. I thought it'd be perfect for me since I liked being alone. I was wrong. The building was one of those modern glass and steel types. Big lobby, echoing hallways, elevator music that never stopped playing. At night, it felt off. Too quiet. Even the air felt heavy. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights were the same routine. Walk the floors, check the cameras, write my reports, and try not to fall asleep. About 3 weeks in, I started noticing weird things. On my first patrol, I saw an office light flickering on the 5th floor. I radioed my coworker, Tom, who worked the first shift before me. He said he'd turned off all the lights before leaving. When I went to check, the office door was unlocked. Inside, the computer monitor was still glowing, and there were fresh fingerprints on the desk. That wouldn't have been weird, except that particular office belonged to a guy who died in a car crash 2 months ago. His name was Mr. Collins, and that room had been empty ever since. I tried to brush it off. Maybe someone forgot to lock up. But as the week went on, more strange stuff happened. The elevators would move between floors when no one was in them. Cameras showed shadows passing through empty corridors. And sometimes when I walked the stairwell, I'd hear footsteps above me. Heavy boots echoing, but when I climbed up, the floor would be empty. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I was in the security office watching the monitors when I noticed something odd. Camera 12, the one showing the 5th floor hallway, had a figure standing at the end. A man in a suit and tie, motionless, facing the camera. I grabbed the walkie-talkie. Tom, you seeing this? Then I remembered. Tom wasn't on the shift. I was alone. I looked back up. The man was gone. I rewound the footage. He never moved, never walked away. He just vanished. The next few nights, I started hearing noises from the basement storage area, the part of the building we never used. Boxes, old office furniture, broken printers. I told my supervisor, but he laughed it off. It's an old building, he said. Probably pipes or raccoons. Yeah, raccoons that wear suits, apparently. So, the next time I heard the noise, I decided to check for myself. It was 3:15 a.m. when I went down there. The air smelled like dust and wet concrete. The flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Halfway through the corridor, I saw something on the floor, an old ID badge. When I picked it up, I froze. It was Mr. Collins' badge, the same man whose office I'd found unlocked. And then I heard it, that soft, steady sound of breathing. Someone was standing in the dark corner at the end of the hall. I aimed my flashlight, but the beam barely reached him. All I could make out was the shape of a man in a suit, his head tilted unnaturally to the side, like it was hanging by a thread. "Who's there?" I shouted. No response. Then he took one step forward, and the lights cut out. Everything went pitch black. I ran. I don't even remember how I made it back to the security room, but when I checked the cameras again, the basement feed was static. That morning, I filed my resignation. I didn't even wait for approval. I just left my badge on the desk and walked out. A week later, Tom texted me. He said the building was closed for investigation. They'd found footprints in the basement, large ones leading into the wall and ending right below the security camera. But here's the part that still keeps me awake some nights. When I looked at the footage one last time before leaving my job, I noticed something. In the reflection of the office window behind me, there was a faint figure standing right over my shoulder, wearing a suit and tie with his head tilted to the side. If you ever work the night shift, remember this. Not everything you see on the cameras is real, but not everything that's real shows up on the cameras either. If you made it this far into the video, you're braver than most people who start it. Both of these stories are real, reminders that the scariest things don't live in our imagination. They live in the dark corners of the real world. If you've ever experienced something that still keeps you up at night, Share your story in the comments. I might feature it in the next video. And if you enjoyed these stories, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell, so you'll never miss the next night that something comes knocking. Until then, stay safe. And whatever you do, don't check that sound coming from your hallway.